Hello, everyone. I can see your hellos from various places in Ukraine. Very happy to see all of you attending this session. And this is why I wanted to start off with, first of all, a definition of the word networking, a definition that I found online. So you can see that networking is defined as the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information, which means also that this form of interaction can take place via it can take online via the use of computers or in a real life setting, interacting lively. And of course, making use of the device, of the computers, of whatever means of technology in order to operate interactively. Well, our session is going to be focusing on this form of networking, the lively one, the live performance, the live interaction that can take place within a common setting. And the main idea, is to see how in this age of technology, in this age of AI, where we are mainly preoccupied of how we're going to assess our assessment tools, trying to understand how we're going to handle technology, I think that it has become more evident than ever that the school and an educational setting in general should also try to train students how they're going to be able to collaborate and inspire each other from an activity that they will be working on collaboratively. Because this is the real life skill that in the end of the day matters no matter what medium it is that we make use of in order to complete a specific task. So team working, it might sound like going a bit back to basics, but on the other hand, it is a real life skill that will never cease to exist. The advancement of technology on many occasions has occurred based on collaboration between two scientists, between two partners that have developed a specific machine. So of course, which is the setting that is supposed to train students to be able to learn how to collaborate, to learn how to cultivate those communication and critical thinking skills that can, with joint forces, make a good team as to reach a specific example, a specific result. So definitely it has to do with making use of collaboration and inspiration as a result of team working. So let's see now, what are the benefits? When we are trying to implement peer learning in class, what could be the main benefits that the students are gaining from it? First of all, why should this be part of a classroom setting? I always consider that what the classroom can offer is much more than the teacher preaching and demonstrating their knowledge in order for the students to be able to learn something uh, as to have the acquired information from that specific lesson. It's also about being able to make use of this knowledge in such a way that it can benefit much more than just gaining some knowledge. It's also about being able to work on it. And this is how critical thinking, communication, collaboration is fostered and facilitated in a classroom. So over to you now. When we get students, when we teach students to learn how to collaborate, what is it that they benefit from? Okay, time to swap those messages from greetings from here and there and hellos from here and there into some responses to questions, right? Let me trigger you a bit in order to answer some questions when it comes to this session that we're going to be focusing on based on your classroom experience. When you have your students collaborating, what are some of the skills that you see that they are developing? What are some of the advantages you see that they are you are acquiring from um, their take on the subject that you have just spent some time to analyze? I already see your answers. There you go. Empathy, listen to each other, communication skills, listening skills. Wonderful, wonderful. Actually, much more. I always say this, much more than the typical listening comprehension activity, because they are lively listening and they are interacting. It's not only passive listening and just responding to some listening comprehension questions. Eagerness to speak, because the main idea is not to try to, like in an oral practice exercise, to demonstrate how am I actually making use of the new vocabulary and the new grammar that I have been taught, but I got to respond to a specific task. And that is the main goal, not necessarily on the grammar that I'm going to accurately make use of. Wonderful. Let me add some of my some of the benefits that I have considered and that you have mentioned also. Learning from one another. The knowledge that one student might have on a specific subject might stem from background knowledge that has been acquired from a home setting. So they have the opportunity to learn from one another using the English language as a medium, but being also to able to communicate through that. Um, Learning how to collaborate with what you mentioned by emphasizing, focusing on empathy and being one there for the other. They're learning how to collaborate for a common task. Developing organizational and planning skills. Now, this is another very useful contribution that pair work activities can offer to students in class, and especially when it is done in class. Allowing students to evaluate their own learning. Okay, so this was our take regarding a specific subject, right? What is it that we have acquired? Are we satisfied with the result that we have reached up to now? um, Enable students to give and receive constructive feedback, and helping finding solutions to problems and providing emotional support. Students, when they're working together, they have more or less the opportunity to assess themselves before being assessed by their teacher. And this is a great benefit, because the result before the end result of that specific task is like really profitable also for the students, in the sense that they are also going to be able to give each other the opportunity to have something to contribute based on the constructive feedback that they have supported in answering to these tasks. Becoming more receptive to learning, and also the most important, I would say, fostering a culture of community while developing soft skills. Now, you have noticed, I'm pretty sure you can add more benefits to this. Now, you have noticed that my idea in the talk has to do with how we can implement this in a classroom setting. I am a teacher, and I have taught 45 to 50-minute classes, which means I know the limitations and I know what struggles we have to go through in order to be able to make ends meet in a lesson where you have to introduce, you have to a new topic, you have to focus on the activities, you're gonna get more and more students heard in class and all that. So are you kidding me? How am I going to find a time as a teacher in order to put that into practice? Well, it's a matter of strategy, of course. And of course, the most important thing is to take into account that not every lesson has to necessarily be the same. And of course, what we hear on webinars and seminars cannot be implemented in every lesson. It's just ideas that can find their 5 to 10 minute, let's say, share in some lessons during a month that can focus on what it is that you want obtain from your students as an end result. So yes, the question you're probably gonna be asking is if there is any room for peer learning in class while we are teaching in that typical 45 to 50-minute lesson. Well, what is it that probably might stand as a burden and makes us a bit skeptical, make us go, about not wanting to allocate some time for peer learning in class in that 45 to 50-minute lesson? Of course, students require to be trained, need to be trained. A lot of the students don't learn in even their daily school how to collaborate, right? So probably it might have to be with what it is that we implement as an activity in uh, in our class to make in our ELT class to make our students uh, gain some experience when it comes to learning how to collaborate for a task. Yes, they could be hesitating. They might not feel comfortable with uh, an activity which involves collaboration in class. So this might result to a lack of confidentiality because they might not be feeling secure in a group or a pair work activity that the students have been assigned. And of course, sometimes it might have to do with the parents as well. What is it that the parents usually think when they hear noise in the class, or they find that there is noise in the class, that it's non-productive noise? But what we want to get the students to understand is that, yes, we want noise, but we want productive noise, noise that contributes to the learning process. So this is why, I mean, the main idea here is to see, first of all, how we're going to create this culture of peer studying, of group studying, uh, pair work activities or group work activities implemented in the class, but of course, what can take place after their time in school or during weekends. Students need organization, but in order for this to foster and be generalized across different settings, it needs to be cultivated in class. And you as a teacher, yes, definitely have to get students to become familiar on how they're gonna work on this in the classroom setting as well. So what I'm gonna do right now, in order to show that I'm gonna make use to show you that this is something that can be implemented in a classroom setting by making use of our course books, and more specifically, Portal to English, which is one of the Publications books. Of course, it's not only limited to Portal. I'm going to show you for what reason I'm just using Portal as an example. But as because we do offer a teacher's book, which gives a step-by-step guidance to the lesson, what I'm going to be focusing on is how we can implement the ideas that are found in the teacher's book in the lesson as to generate a peer learning session in a school setting, in a classroom setting. So let me go to the chat box because I can see some messages. Hellos, excellent. So hello everybody who's just joined in. Wow, there's more than 200 people here attending. Wonderful. So what you see is something quite familiar, I assume, to all of you, right? It's a course book. You might be using another course book. It's okay, whatever course book it is that you are making use of. The main idea is to see how we can implement the ideas or get some of our own ideas on how this 3B lesson can result to peer and peer learning being cultivated as a mentality in class. The first activity in this specific lesson is listening, right? So we're focusing on the listening skill. This is the listening activity. And as you can see, first of all, it is a typical listening comprehension activity where we have students who are to listen to four short dialogues between a teacher and the student. Right. So over to you. I want to ask you a question. What is it that you would suggest as an idea in order to get the students intrigued to what it is that they're going to be listening in this specific lesson? Over to the chat box. How do we start off? I mean, the activity here is listen to four short dialogues between a teacher and their students and take the picture. What could make a good kickstart before we get the students to do the listening activity? What is it that we can do in order to activate background knowledge, in order to cater for mixed ability classroom settings, in order to make the weaker students, for example, a bit more comfortable with what it is that they're going to be listening to? Prediction, discussing the pictures. We can discuss the pictures and compare them. Wonderful, wonderful. Brief warm-ups, ask about their experience. Exactly. This topic might be, this lesson might be from a general topic that discusses probably an environmental problem. So how does the environmental issue that was introduced to us in lesson 3A connects with what we are encountering in these pictures? What do you think unites all these pictures? If you are to think about a word, exactly. Critical thinking ideas, asking students to predict. I like the fact that you use, most of you, prediction. And this is like a great warm-up kickstart activity for students to be able to get a bit more triggered to communicate, but at the same time, what is it that we are securing? For weaker students, we're giving them also the idea, even to, and we can encourage that, to make some notes on the pictures. So for example, yes, let's say in one of those pictures, we see pollution, contamination, could be a word that they can take down, note down, and order for them to be able to make use of it when they're going to be listening to the audio. Wonderful, wonderful ideas, and I'm fully in sync with you. And those warm-up exercises do not have to last that long. I mean, I usually say that it could be like a fast-paced 1-minute intro to the listening activity that they're going to be preoccupied with. Now, let me go through what the teacher's book suggests here in order to see what is it that we can make use of. This is an extract you see from the teacher's book. Those of you who are making use of books know that it's an interleaved book. So on one page, you have what your students have. On the other page, you have a step-by-step guide to the lesson. So let's see what the teacher's book suggests here. Draw a mind map on the board with the phrase environmental problems in the circle and have students come up with any words that are related to the topic. And then what you said, what a lot of you said, have students look at the photos and ask them to pay attention to the differences between each pair of photos. Encourage students to take notes to help them while doing their activity. Play the recording and so on. So you see here, there is like a step-by-step guide on how to work on the listening activity without focusing on the listening skill, but prioritizing on communication. So this is what turns the classroom into a big group where they have to discuss a topic, which is the topic of the module, I assume, environmental problems. And here we have words that are going to pop up in that more or less are going to be key vocabulary to what it is that they're going to be listening. So we're equipping them there by activating their background knowledge, by giving also some info on this issue, which is being explored in this specific listening activity. It does not necessarily have to be time consuming. I mean, you just allocate, let's say, 1 minute of your classroom session for this specific lesson, and then you are getting your students to take down notes, which is also a real life skill that you're cultivating in class. Note taking is something that should be demonstrated a lot in class, because this is what they're going to be doing also at the university level as well, if you are to ask me. So let me go to the chat box because I can see some of your exactly right keywords like Licia mentions. Look at the pictures and tell us what the global issues are. Wonderful, wonderful ideas. So this is the listen one activity. Now, the teacher's book here from Portal suggests also an optional activity. Portal to English, like Full Blast, like the majority of our series, also have some optional activities that emphasize in getting students to work in groups or pairs to explore a bit more the topic which is being raised in the class. So this optional activity that you can assign your students has to do with getting them, and it can be in class or out of class, getting students to find a photo on the internet or take a photo by themselves through their mobile phones, depending on the age group, of course. Here we're talking about secondary level students, so I'm pretty sure they all got their phones. If not, it's okay. We're going to be focusing on what they can extract from the internet and depict an environmental issue they would like to address. Then ask students to bring their photos to the next lesson to show the rest of the students and say why they have chosen this specific environmental issue. And of course, as an outro to this activity, it can be a collaborative joint work activity where you use a large piece of card and have students stick their own photos from this specific lesson. This is a great idea for homework, and what it is that we can benefit from this actually is that you are implementing something that you find in the course book that you are making use of. You don't have to necessarily resort to something that is not connected with the material that you are making use of. And at the same time, you are giving them the idea on how to use the information that they have collected from this listening activity and be generalized through another activity. So the info they collect from this listening activity is not simply to work on the listening comprehension exercise, but to work on something in pair groups or collaboratively in the classroom setting or outside of the classroom setting as well. Let me go to the chat box again because I said excellent. Just of course, I'm pretty sure you have your own ideas, and there can be something that you can, or there can be different ways through which you can exploit what you find in the topics which are being discussed in this specific lesson. So, peer learning, how it can be established, let's say, from a simple listening comprehension activity. And this all with the guidance of what we have as a suggestion from the course book. Now, let me go through the vocabulary activity. As you can see here, the second skill, the second part of this lesson is focusing on vocabulary. And here, if I am to look on the vocabulary activity, the emphasis is on forming collocations. That is, connecting the words from column 1 and column 2, the number columns with letter columns, in order to form collocations. A typical activity that you have seen so many times in course books, and of course very beneficial because it familiarizes students with the collocation, and at the same time, it enriches their vocabulary. However, here we want to get students also to benefit from this. So what is it that we can do as an intro to the vocabulary activity in order to give them a reason to remember what it is that they are learning here? So I'm going to go to the teacher's book. We have the aim of this activity, which is to present and familiarize students with collocations about the environment. Wonderful, that's the aim. And if we're gonna do the activity, we will have successfully achieved that in the sense that we have presented it to the students. But I wanna make a connection because this is what the modular approach in ELT is all about. So we want to make a connection with the topic that is being discussed. So the vocabulary stems from the topic which is being exploited in this specific module. So for this reason, the suggestion here that we find, our suggestion is write on the board endangered species. We're talking about environmental problems, and of course, endangered species falls under the same category, which has to do with environmental problems. So explain to students that a group of two or more words usually go together and form collocations. This is the definition of what collocations is. And there are many collocations about the environment. So get the students to be attracted to words 1 to 10 and A to J, and get them to form collocation based on their background knowledge and the listening activity. So this will get them to go back to the notes that they collected from the listening activity or some of the information they discussed before, and will get them to do the activity with a different kickstart, coming from a different kickstart. This is also an activity that can challenge higher performing students. And because we want to mix, we do have mixed ability classroom settings, as we have discussed so many times. I mean, like, this is the norm. I mean, like, as teachers, we know that not all of our students are at the same level. So we get them to focus on this, and then we play the recording from listening activity A and have students check their answers. So it's like, before getting into the vocabulary activity, let's go and have a listening activity again. But right now, the focus, the spotlight will be, how many collocations did I hear? And I'm going to make down notes from the previously heard listening activity, where I had a totally different purpose, that was to make a connection with the dialogue, and let's say caption the dialogue which was being presented. So exactly, you see, like Victoria says, it's a productive way to learn any theme using collocations, not separate words, and also an opportunity to see how these two activities can blend, how can be targeting the same skill, of course, but with a different projector every time. So in the first take of the audio, our concentration was to caption the image. On the second one was to listen carefully and make a connection with the listening words that we have. So you can see that how peer learning can foster in an activity that is meant to be an individual type activity. We get the students to collaborate in order to work on this activity together. And then a suggestion for an optional activity here, which is quiz time. And let's have a look at this quiz. This is also taken from the teacher's book of Portal and from this specific lesson. And actually, we're going to work on this together because, I mean, the main idea is to get the students triggered to make use of the knowledge that they are acquiring. And how are they going to make use of the knowledge they're acquiring? By implementing activities that have to do with learning in general, trivia knowledge, and so on. So let's focus on this quiz, this very brief quiz that you can ask your students, or you can write on the board these two questions. You can tease them also while they're trying to work on the vocabulary activity, and ask them these questions. Actually, this is what I'm going to do right now. I want you to focus on question 1 and answer this question, the first question. I want you to guess, how much of the Earth's surface is covered by water? About 25%, or B, A, about 25%, or B, about 70%? Let me see your answers. Just a wild guess. I'm not going to be assessing you. Okay. Yep. That's what I can see on the chat box. Everybody, I think we got an 100% favor response for B. One is B. And now let me get you focused on the second question. According to a study, there may be no fish left in the oceans by A, 2050, or B, 2500. Now let's go to question 2. Okay, I see a mixture here of responses, but yes, it's safe to say that the majority definitely agrees with A. Exactly. So yes, according to a study, there may be no fish left in the oceans by 2050. Okay, now that's a very easy, maybe to even identify this answer by just Googling it. But the curiosity here is, what is it that we must do, or not what we must do, but uh, what is it that might turn us into this dystopic future of having, let's say, no fish in the ocean by 2050? What are the wrong things that we have to do, that we will do in order to have such a very detrimental result in our oceans? So it gets them not only to work on this, but also to work on the sources that they have to that give these answers. So encouraging peers to learn together. Actually, this is something that has been demonstrated in many occasions. And you can see here that working together, the quarantine, of course, has showed us that it can work also from different settings, while networking in order to go to my prior definition of the word networking, using the media to network and at the same time collaborating, which is another way of defining what networking is all about. So let me go through another activity here, another lesson, which is the let me exactly, I can see your A's here that you have answered. Great. So have an unforgettable time at Yosemite National Park. Look at this. It is a reading comprehension exercise. It's a reading text, right? And usually what is it? Of course, these activities are emphasizing a lot in cultivating reading skills for students. And at the same time, we want them to become familiar with the process of extracting information from a text in order to respond to the follow-up reading comprehension activities. This is wonderful. Our students to a great extent are assessed based on that. But if I am to make this a bit more like a task for our students, it's important for me to get them to be focusing not only on the information of the text, what is it that the text provides me in order for the students to do their reading comprehension activity. Maybe in class, I don't want to spend every reading comprehension lesson to get the students to do the same sort of activity. Maybe I want them to focus on the background information that I have to share about Yosemite National Park. So the teacher's book provides us with some information that you can share with your students and maybe trigger them to focus on it. But have a look at this. This is another optional activity which is in sync with what we talk about in Bloom's taxonomy, evaluating, like reaching those higher order thinking skills and demonstrating evaluation in a course book. Because, you know, it's wonderful that we are familiar with higher order thinking skills, but let's see how we can implement those higher order thinking skills. So, as you know, as you probably have noticed, or from the little that you can see, this probably might remind you of a leaflet. So, of course, a leaflet has a specific role, a specific task to, if it is for promotional reasons, it's trying to promote a specific service. In this occasion, a specific destination where they try to attract um, consumers to let's say, purchase a package and want to go on a packed travel packed excursion to Yosemite National Park. Now, the optional activity here does not focus necessarily on the details of the text. Of course, the information is valuable here, but the students here are asked to focus the leaflet as a leaflet. The suggestion here is to show students several leaflets on the internet or bring some to the lesson and ask them to evaluate them based on the certain stylistic characteristics they know about leaflets. So what is it that we're requiring here? What is it that we're getting our students to do? What are the skills that are being cultivated through an activity like this, which is an optional activity to what it is that you have in the course book? What are the skills when you're actually getting the students to have a look at the reading text, do the reading comprehension activity, but here, I don't want them to respond, to use, let's say, rotary learning skills in order to memorize information about the text. We're asking them to do something different. Let me see what you have as comments. Creativity, exactly. Critical thinking skills, and exactly, critical thinking. Critical thinking, as a lot of you mentioned, because they are looking and they're comparing between leaflets, right? And based on their own style, based on their own background knowledge, based on some experience that they might have from having seen other leaflets online or tangible leaflets that they have acquired or that you might have bring in class, we're asking them to evaluate the material and judge which is better based on the images, based on the information supplied, based on the uh, um, let's say, the offer in itself and how it is projected. So you see here that, again, the text, the reading text is put in the center, but in this, its use here is not the lower performing skills which have to do with understanding simply and submitting your answer to a reading comprehension text. It's about evaluating the text, having a look at the information and having read the info that is being supplied, but also having an overall look on the whole package which is being presented. So you see that the lesson becomes a bit more focused on critical thinking because we're asking students to be triggered to evaluate what it is that they have and make comparisons and have their own pick. And actually, why not generalize it into a debate and get the students' own opinions about exactly, as you mentioned, study the different styles, critical thinking of great importance in the educational process, as you mentioned. Exactly. So you see, a text, a reading text, a two-page lesson can transform into many other things. And of course, this can be a result of peer learning exercise because we want the students as groups to shape their own opinion and demonstrate what is their own take on what it is they are being presented with. Actually, this is more or less like the flipped classroom model that works. In order to go back to Bloom's taxonomy that I mentioned before, what it is that we are doing here is that we are providing a flipped classroom approach. Yes, here, for example, the students in the previously assigned task that I demonstrated are to justify a stand or decision. Let's say offer their own critique on the specific leaflet that was projected. What we are doing right now also is we are more or less um, providing a flipped classroom model in that the students maybe, if you want to save classroom time, can be assigned with a reading comprehension task to do it as part of a homework exercise. And in class, what they have to project is not their answers, but their answers are going to be demonstrated and how much they have understood the reading comprehension activities based on the evaluation and evaluating form that they're going to be presenting in class. So what is going to be mainly dominating your lesson is not the correct responses that were found if 2 is D and 3 is C and 1 is A. This is very important, and we are not going to definitely not overlook that. But the emphasis here is that these answers can be a good stepping stone in order to be able to provide this. So this is like a way of demonstrating how the flipped classroom approach can be used with classroom tools, with what you have on your course book in class as well. Capacity of evaluation, as Leana mentions. Exactly. And let me show you another activity here. This is another reading text. What is it that we can do in order to get the students a bit more triggered in what it is that they're going to be reading? Okay, so this is a quite demanding text here that offers information about flying on a VR ride, virtual reality, right? A virtual reality ride. So before we get into that, let me get to the teacher's book here, which has some questions where we can get students to be divided into small groups, and in groups try to respond to these questions. If we want to save time, we can assign one question to one group, another question to another group, in order to have each group work on one question and have, let's say, take less time to get the answers from all groups. If we have more time, we can assign all 3 questions to all groups. You are going to judge that based on the classroom size and how much time you have, of course, to allocate for this. So you see here we've got the questions. What is the tallest steel roller coaster in the world? What is the fastest roller coaster in the world? What is the steepest roller coaster in the world? So you are getting them, or you might ask them about swap the what with where. Let's say if you have the information when it comes to that, it all of a sudden will get the students a bit more triggered, because when they have some information about the text that they're going to be reading, they are going to be definitely a bit more stimulated to read about what it is on the text that is being presented here. Sometimes it might work with the images. Let's say, does this image of this character remind you of someone from a movie, right? And so on. Oh, exactly. Thank you very much. Thumbs up also to you for your suggestions here. Explain the meaning of the word steep. Ask students to search on the internet and find the answers to these questions. If it's not possible in the class, assign the task as homework. Have students compare their answers with their classmates. So you see that there are little tiny ways of getting students to learn to collaborate step by step. This is what it's all about. You're not going to dedicate an entire 45 minutes to get a peer learning philosophy within one lesson, within the limits of a one lesson, the session that can be provided to get stimulated to participate as activities. You're going to do this step by step, but the more that you provide snippets of activities that reinforce collaboration, the more stimulating it's going to be for them to participate in this. And exactly, it's going to be something very interesting for teenagers, an interesting task, because they're going to be, you know what, they're going to, in the end of the day, they're going to be doing what they do outside of the classroom setting, looking at the internet for some information. If they don't have that information and it's not accessible in class, or you do not yet feel secure of getting your students to browse the internet in class because they might be wasting their time and all that, and you know, it's that requires training, of course, with the time limits and everything, but you can assign it as a homework activity to get them to bring something in class for the next session. And why this should be incorporated, the flip model incorporated, as you see. Well, first of all, it requires accessibility to video material. We require students to be trained. So in order to incorporate an activity like this, yes, we need to make sure how we're going to take into account that this can be implemented. Make them feel comfortable with the task and at the same time consider their age groups. In order to do that, we need to keep the lessons or the edits of the lessons short. As you see, the idea is to start small and make them feel also responsible to complete tasks. So through activities like this, we start small. We just ask a question or two questions where they are to collaborate. We are implementing the video in order for them to make use of it briefly in order to use it to extract information. We're educating them that watching a video is not only using the internet in general, is not only for entertainment purposes, but it's also for being able to uh, acquire some skills or learn things, right? So if we want to incorporate the flipped classroom approach, we can do it through snippets, through by starting small as we're doing that. And of course, training students how to do. This is what we're doing when we are having a word map projected and we're asking them to work together in peers and pairs to come up with a common answer for the specific lesson. Uh, Videos like this one. Okay, I mean, let me see how I'm doing with time. Of course, running out of time like always, okay? Uh, this is why Portal, for example, has got videos. I'm not gonna show the video right now. That can serve as an intro to a lot of information. So for example, you see here, Portal to Module 4 has a video in order to generate discussion, to give some information about the text. Here, for example, on this text, we have 4 destinations for a holiday. Background information is given also in the teacher's book for you that you can share with your students. And that can be quite triggering because you might want them to, you can tell them that I'm going to divide you right now into 5 groups. Group 1 is going to listen to me sharing some information about the Sphinx. I want you to take down notes based on the info that I give you. There's Group B, Angel Falls. I'm going to give you some information about Angel Falls. And then I'm going to ask you some questions, or I want you to watch the video and see what is it that you have taken down on notes in order to make comparisons. Have a look at this one now. There are also optional activities like this one here that you can start as a teaser. The cover page is always a good intro to the module that they're going to be extracting information from. So here from the teacher's book, I have taken an optional activity, which is more or less about getting the students to solve riddles. And remember, these are the riddles of the Sphinx. So you can understand that your life depends on your answers, right? If you're going to be able to run away from the Sphinx. So let me have you solve these riddles as if you were students that were going to write in the board. So I want you all to focus on riddle number 1. What goes on? What goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? The first question. What goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? Let me see some of the answers that are being given here. Okay. The majority, I think, has answered correctly. Human, a man, a person. Exactly. Wonderful. So you've made the first step in order to save yourself from the Sphinx. But the Sphinx, in order to let you go, has a second riddle as well. There are 2 sisters. One gives birth to the other, and she, in turn, gives birth to the first. Who are the 2 sisters? Okay, everybody has answered correctly from the people who have responded. There are many of you who have responded human being. So over to the second question, which is a bit more difficult here. There are two sisters. One gives birth to the other, and she in turn gives birth to the first. Who are the two sisters? Okay. I see some different answers here. Look, before, I haven't noticed that this one gives birth to the other, and she in turn gives birth to the first. So, yes, I do get the first scale for mother and daughter, but it doesn't work the other way around, right? And yes, I can see right now you're getting the answers correctly. It is indeed day and night. So the day gives birth to the night, and in turn, the night gives birth to the day. Okay, but since we are all one big team and we're collaborating here, of course, the Sphinx is gonna get us, set us all free, and we're not gonna be eaten, becoming a consumption product of the Sphinx. Exactly. Wonderful, wonderful, great. So you can see, I mean, again, this is meant to serve like a teaser for what it is that they're going to be talking about in this forthcoming lesson, Time for a Holiday. So, peer editing sessions. Well, the main idea, I mean, and what is it that we can do when it comes to different sort of activities? Focus is to review and critique examples of student writing. These can real or mock examples. These can be real or mock examples, which can display or distribute to the entire class. This is another way of doing, incorporating peer learning for writing activities and getting the students, for example, to swap their activities before they are being given to the teacher. A writing activity, for example, if it is not given to the teacher directly, can serve like a good opportunity for peer learning to take place. So of course, this means that students, when they're going to be correcting or providing feedback, let's say, to the assignment of their peer, they have to take into account that each step matters. And here, for example, complementing is very important. Making suggestions, correcting, and correcting. So when we are incorporating peer editing sessions, it's more or less like creating, fostering this facility in getting the students to be intrigued also, to provide their peers with compliments, as to be create this culture of, you know, rewarding your classmate, even in a bad essay. It's important to cultivate this philosophy, this approach, that there is something positive to say. This is going to generate and this is going to motivate the entire class. And it might even make those difficult classroom relationships among students become better. So instead of you being the receptor of the writing activity, students are going to be swapping writing activities, complementing on some of the good things that they found in essay. Even in an F essay, you got to tell them that you're going to definitely find something wonderful to say to your peer. Making suggestions, what is it that you would do in this specific activity? And then, of course, providing some ideas, some corrections to their peers. This will, for one thing, if you are to ask me, also can take some classroom work off your weight, right? But on the other hand, it's gonna make it a bit more interesting for students and motivated for students to work on writing activities and focus also on the mistakes that they are making by the correction their peers have suggested. Stress confidentiality. This is something very important also, because if we want to implement peer learning and we want to get it generalized across different environments, we must familiarize them with the fact that they should cultivate the empathy that you also mentioned in your talk. Everyone learns at different speeds. Adapting to feedback, we should take into account it isn't always easy, and we should be knowledgeable about it. Exercises are learning experiences for all, and difficulties in collaboration should be discussed with the teacher only, with the group, not sharing this and spotlighting students in front of the rest of the class, because then we're not contributing to the wonderful classroom environment, but we're eradicating and we're creating difficulties from this. Put them in this virtuous circle of a peer learning loop, which is about gaining knowledge, applying knowledge, receiving constructive feedback, and reflecting on those skills from the lesson. You see, and this is the main idea, how our typical two-page lesson, if it is exploited, and by making use of some of the suggestions that are included in the teacher's book, can transform into a lesson that's gonna provide this flipped classroom approach. And by making use of the same tool, the course book that you have, and not searching for different tools here and there, not that you are not allowed to do so. Of course, you're more than welcome to do and find resources that as experienced teachers, I'm pretty sure you all have. But knowing that you also have some suggestions included as part of what it is that you use as a main tool. So let me leave some time also for any questions that you might have about this session. I had to be a bit more quick because I ran out of time again, and got to do justice to my colleague, Greg, who's right now has joined us. Any questions regarding this talk, or anything that you have implemented and you consider that could be very beneficial for your colleagues that you can share, you're more than welcome for me to read it out. Thank you very much also. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation on peer learning and group work. It was really inspiring and insightful. And I especially liked how you used examples from the textbook to show us practical ways to implement peer learning in the classroom. So it was a great learning experience. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Greg is already here, so I'm pretty sure that, I mean, I know Greg, so he's got very interesting things to share also with you.
Yeah, so I guess we are ready to dive into the second topic. And we are incredibly lucky to have Gregg with us today. And we are eager to hear your, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me again. It's an absolute pleasure to be back. Give me one moment to share my screen. Okay. So just to do a little sound check, can everyone see the title of the presentation? Can everyone see me clearly? And can everyone hear me clearly? Thumbs up in the chat box. Yes? Excellent. Thank you very much. So, as the title of this presentation asks you, what is one of our students' greatest fears in the classroom? I'd like to get your opinion on this question, please. If you can write in the chat box, what would you say in your classroom would be one of their greatest fears regarding English? To make mistakes, speaking, to be tested on their knowledge of English. Yes, mistakes, communication, be misunderstood Interesting. Yes. Making mistakes and looking silly in the eyes of their peers. Speaking, 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 mistakes. Excellent. The teacher. That's good. Being too shy, lack of words. All right, using grammar. Everything that you are writing about in the chat box revolves around speaking and communication. But before we jump into this, as I always like to do, I want to say one thing before I begin. On behalf of Ukraine and Educational Group, we would like to say thank you once again. Thank you for being a teacher, for being an educationalist, because as you see here on this slide, the definition of being a teacher, in my eyes, is not necessarily the person who passes on knowledge, but it's the second part, that you change lives forever. And this is what we do in the classroom, my dear friends. We change our students' lives forever by nurturing and strengthening our relationship with our students. Now, each and every day that our students come into class, that fear is the relationship that they have with you. And this fear is, how can we further this relationship with our teacher and with our friends? Only through communication. Okay, so as in every language, communication requires two macro skills, speaking and listening. And it's a continuous process. It happens all the time in class. It happens all the time in their day-to-day lives. Now, something that I suggest to teachers around the world is, in your school, in your institution, in your learning environment, I want you to create a culture of English. I want you to try to implement an environment where students not only learn English in the amount of time that they're in the classroom, but to branch this out of the class into the hallways, into the other classrooms, into the cafeteria, into the place where they hang out, outside of school, at home, with their friends online, in social media, working on projects. We need to expand their experiences in English so that they can practice more. Because as we know, and let me see your answer in the chat box, be very careful. Practice makes what? Practice makes. Let's finish that little. Let's see, what is everyone writing? My son just yelled from downstairs the answer. Everybody is writing this word, but let me write this word to everybody. Practice makes improvement. And I will talk about this later on. Keep this in mind, this mindset. Okay. Practice makes improvement. It doesn't make perfect, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Okay. So, excuse me. Another question I ask you to reflect on is, what do you wish to achieve with your students as far as speaking skills are concerned? Now, Hannah wrote a word, confidence. Victoria wrote fluency. Yes. Progress. Yes. Fluency. Okay. I'm not going to get into fluency versus accuracy in this presentation. I'm going to be talking about some other aspects of speaking. But I'm asking you this question. What do you wish to achieve with your students? After this conference, this online conference that we've had with Chris, I want you to ask your students to ask themselves, what do I, as a student, wish to achieve with my teacher as far as speaking skills are concerned? And this, my dear friends, is where it gets interesting. I love your answers. You're spot on. I agree with all of you. But we need to get into our students' heads. We need to try to understand what is it that our students believe when it comes to English that they need. What do they believe they need to achieve when it comes to speaking? Is it just to speak to pass a test? Is it just to speak to achieve elite standard in fortnight or gold standard in fortnight with their friends? Okay, so this is a question I also want you to ask your students. Now, someone just wrote a word, success. Interesting. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So I love quotes, and this is a quote that I love to share with students, and I hope you do too with your students. I would love for students, and for you too, as a teacher, to speak to your students and have your students speak to you in such a way that other people will love to listen to them. At the same part, in this relationship of speaking with our students, listen to them, actively listen to them in such a way that they are going to love to speak to you. Now, in order to do this, okay, in order to have this synergy of speaking, I'm going to help you today with three things. The first is looking at speaking from a different perspective. And in doing so, we're going to see, how do our students feel? Emotions, feelings when it comes to communication. Mindsets. How are we thinking? How are they thinking? What is it about speaking that is blocking them? And then finally, what we're going to do is talk about some things that they need. Okay. Some things that our students need. Just give me one moment. I have to... Okay. The internet is all right. The trials and tribulations when you're doing an online talk and you have two kids sharing the internet. Just making sure that it's okay. All right. So, emotions. I would like you to share with me in the chat box if you believe that this is true in your classroom. Do all emotions matter in the classroom? Absolutely. Every single emotion matters in class. And yet, our students are afraid to share their emotions. Our students are afraid to show vulnerability. Our students are afraid and fearful of showing that they don't know something. The next statement that I wish to share with you is, too many students are suppressing, holding back, pushing down their emotions. Do you think this is true in your classroom, in life with our students? Do you think this is true? I'm going to give you some reflective statements about how your students feel. And I want you also to keep this in mind for things to discuss with your students. And don't think, my dear friends, that if your students are in primary school, that this is too advanced for them. It's not, believe me. The next statement that I want to share with you is a full range of emotions are actually what make us human. And when I say a full range, it's just that. That when you go into class, you don't need to be happy-go-lucky every single day. If you are, that's great. But what I'm saying is, sometimes we wake up in the morning and we're just not having a good day. We're having a bad day. It's okay to share this with your students. It's okay to explain to them how you are feeling, because you as the role model will open the door for them to share their feelings with you. These emotions that we're talking about and what we have are actually what gets us through life. And once a student understands this statement, and we use our awareness of the students in class and our empathy in class, if you see a student that is showing you obvious signs of emotion, that they're not having a good day, we do not force them or call on them or ask them to do something that they're fearful of, that they are uncomfortable with. For example, speaking and communicating. We give them a free pass for the day. And when they see this and they understand this communication that you are sharing with them, this understanding, the relationship becomes stronger. And so I end this slide with emotions helping communication. And I think after discussing this, I think all 200 plus of you with us today can agree that this 100% is true. So these are some statements that I love to share with students, and I share them with you to do the same. Now, when it comes to emotions, what happens when you start a new unit or a new module? What happens to your students when they turn that page and they see the topic, meeting people, as it says here from our New Destinations series? They say, oh my goodness, meeting people, this actually requires us to talk. What is this going to be about? Now, in our series, the cover page is always the most important page of the module, of the unit, in my opinion, because this is the springboard that allows us to dive into everything else that's going to happen. In order for the student, though, to feel comfortable with you and their friends, we need to discuss a few things. And that's why the discussion questions are so important. Because when we're dealing with emotion, this page alleviates the stress that the students are going to have in learning new information, in reinforcing old information, from their realia, from their schema theory, from their experiences in life. So when we talk about discussion questions, take the time to do this with your class. Okay. So it says, do you like meeting new people? Some students will say no, they don't. Some students will laugh. I will laugh with them and say, that's me sometimes when I was younger. But because I practiced English and I wasn't afraid of making mistakes and I wasn't afraid of having people laugh at me, but rather laugh with me, I improved my English. So these discussion questions are hugely important for you to use with your students. Then it says, flick through the module and find a few things. When they do this, we are sparking their curiosity. We're intriguing them to explore what's going to happen in the next pages. Do this in pairs. Don't let them do this individually because they're practicing to discuss. Oh, I found this. Oh, I saw this. And then finally, in this module, you are going to learn a few things. These are the objectives. What are you going to learn in this module? Now, something that I love to do is ask students in little groups to explore these bullets and see how many of them already know some of these things. To share their experiences with this, with their friends. And then to share it with you in front of the class. Once we do this, we are setting the tone, okay, so that students are more comfortable. And if you do this and take the time to do this, your students will feel, as someone said about 4 minutes ago, they will feel successful. They will have a purpose to look ahead tomorrow, the week, the next 2 weeks in finishing this module. You feel me? You understand? You follow me, right? Do you see how this is working? Step by step. Don't be so stuck on having to finish the lesson and complete the activities and rush through things. Take your time and make sure that you have the foundation ready. Okay. All right. So, activity time. This is a quick activity that I wish you to try out in order for you to reflect on your students. Okay. I'll go through this quite quickly. So this way you can do this at home. So the first thing I ask teachers is, when it comes to speaking, I would like you to please think of a student that has difficulty when it comes to speaking. Okay. Now, I want you, not in the chat box, please, write down his or her name, the full name. Okay. And you can do this with any skill set of English. A student that has difficulty with speaking, with reading, with writing, okay, with listening, which will help with speaking. I want you to close your eyes now, and I want you to think of that student and their non-verbals. When I mean non-verbals, I mean writing down things that they do when they're asked to speak? Now, here I would like you to write in the chat box, please. There are many of you with us today. Thank you again for taking the time out and joining us. Write down in the chat box, what is it that your students that have difficulty with speaking do? What do they do when they're asked to speak? What are some of the things that they do non-verbally that show you that they're not comfortable with speaking? Are you aware of these tells, these signs? Because once we are, it will help us. They find the words in translator, really, they blush, right? They mumble, they stumble. No eye contact, absolutely. When you're looking around the room, they go, oh, don't look at him, don't look at him. No, don't, oh, she sees me. Oh, they're gonna call on me, right? That happens very often. They hide behind other students so they can't be seen, right? So there's no connection. They ask to go out of the room. All of a sudden, 5 kids have to go to the bathroom, right? Maybe the student can't breathe. Maybe their stomach hurts. Maybe they're having butterflies in their stomach. Maybe they're sweating. Some people are telling me, oh, okay. No, it isn't. Everything's fine. Okay. So these are the things that we have to discuss with our students, though. Ask them, how do they feel when they're asked to speak? Get their answers. Write it down. And then you'll see the students say, oh my God, me too. You too. Holy cow. I feel that all the time. And then they're practicing to communicate in discussing their fears, in discussing the things that happen to them when they have to speak. So in continuing this little activity, this student that's having difficulty, can you write down 3 things that you know about this student? Now, this is interesting when I do this workshop live and teachers sit in groups and they have to write down things about the student. A lot of teachers can't do this. A lot of teachers can't write down 3 simple things about that student, which leads me to believe that you don't know your student well enough. Interesting. It is so important to know your students. Because when I ask this question, is the student a lower student, an average, or a higher performing student? Guess what? It doesn't matter what level they are. And I know this from experience talking to students, because I have had A+ students come up to me to prove to me that they can speak English. But some of them show me that they've learned English to take a test. And that, my dear friends, is not necessarily the successful way to learn English. It's part of the process, not the whole process. Peggy O'Mara is a writer, and she says, the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. So that student that you just thought of, those students that we have in our class, we need to seriously talk to them in a way so that when they have to practice, they can think of us and say, there's my teacher all the way back here. So that means we need to watch what we say, how we say it, and when we say it in class. Be that inner voice for your students. So, emotions, very, very important with the relationship with our students, okay, and how they feel. The next part of this presentation is the mindset. Now, I love what I do. I love education. 28 years I'm in education, and the growth zone in education is probably one of the most important for their mindsets. And that's having the students find a purpose and continuously find a purpose in life as they mature. To conquer objectives being faced before them. Living their dreams, their aspirations, and setting new goals constantly. This is what we need to do in our class, which is why the cover page is so important, because there we have objectives. There they will find the purpose for this module. There they will set the goals for each lesson. Now, to live dreams is important because I want your students to really follow and spread their wings and do what they want to do in life because it's what they want to do. So when I ask students, what do you want to be in life? And they say to me, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a veterinarian, a policeman, a pilot, a YouTuber, a gamer, an influencer, a hairstylist, a singer, a songwriter, a footballer, an athlete. I say, good, excellent. In order to do that, though, you need to have the right mindsets in life. Now, these mindsets are in our classroom, my dear friends, okay? Growth zone begins when we leave the comfort zone. Victoria, I like that comment. I will get you there in 3 circles. So follow me from the right to the left. From the growth zone, we have what we call the learning zone. And this is where you are each and every day with your students. You are facing the challenges of English with your students every day. You are solving the problems of English every day. They are acquiring new skills every day. And we are extending their comfort zone, as Victoria said there. But Victoria, before we get to the comfort zone, there is one zone that is what we are discussing now with speaking, and that is the fear zone. Students now, more than ever before, have a low self-confidence, low self-esteem. They have a master's degree, sometimes even a PhD in finding excuses. And because of this, because of social media, they are more affected by others' opinions than when we were kids and we didn't have social media. Would you agree with this? I think so. So all of this compounded together brings us to the comfort zone, where they feel safe and in comfort of their environment, low risk, low reward. Well, let me tell you something, my dear friends. I am sick and tired of hearing students saying, I can't. I can't. Stop with the excuses. Stop with the laziness. I want you and I to take the comfort and the fear zones and make them as small as possible. Extend that learning zone by increasing their self-confidence, stopping with the excuses, and not caring about the opinions of others. Facing the challenges together, solving the problems together, acquiring new skills together, and extending that comfort zone so that the learning zone is with it and there's no more fear. That we are comfortable with English. Okay. Clear? Oh, sorry. Oh, what happened? Okay. Is this clear? Yes. Now, these mindsets now of English when it comes to speaking, okay, falls into two categories: the fixed and the growth mindset. Now, everything I've shown you focuses on the growth mindset. Some of our students have a fixed mindset because of society and their home life. Parents do not help with these mindsets. Parents falsely show their kids that they are perfect and that they have this fixed mindset that they know everything, rather than nurturing a growth mindset. And in our books, I'm going to show you right now just how we do this with speaking. Now follow me through this process, okay? When we have the cover page and we're finished with the cover page, we start the first lesson. And in this first lesson, we highlight some micro skills and macro skills of English. We give a little bit of vocab and a little bit of reading. And in this reading exercise, we are actually preparing them by giving them an example of what we're going to expect them to do in that little speaking exercise that you see on the bottom right-hand corner, number 3. Now, does this speaking exercise seem threatening? I don't think so. Does it seem difficult? I don't think so. Because we are using this as building blocks. They learn the vocab, they practice their reading, they listen with the reading, they get an understanding, a gist of what's going to be asked of them in the next activity, and they practice speaking. Once they finish these 3 activities, we go and continue the lesson with a little bit more vocabulary, a little bit of listening. So we're building on the vocabulary. We're implementing the other macro skill of listening. And then practicing speaking again. Why not? Because in our day-to-day interactions, it's all about communication. And this is what we are trying to promote. Okay, the communicative approach. Once they finish lesson 1A, let's take a look at lesson 1B, the growth mindset. New objectives, new skills, new goals. Are you afraid? Maybe. Are you less afraid from a week ago? This is what we asked them. This is what we have to be aware of. Do they seem more comfortable in making mistakes, in not sounding like a native speaker? Are they just participating more? Are they interacting more with their friends in the activities? Where are you from? Vocabulary, reading. Okay, let's continue. Speaking. Here now, we have the wonderful macro skill of grammar. Grammar, a macro skill that all of our students love and enjoy because they all believe that speaking is grammar. And yet, let's debunk this myth, shall we? Speaking is not grammar. We don't want them to get nervous and say, oh, I have to speak and give an example of the first conditional of the past present of the verb to be in the third tense of the fourth. Oh, come on. Relax. Chillax. Just enjoy it. Don't worry so much. But if you need to learn grammar, why not give grammar here as an example and in the same activity have them practice it in speaking? Okay. And if you follow me here, from speaking to grammar to practicing to speaking again, we're integrating all of these skills right away. Okay. All right. Giving you a little taste. A taste of, you know, when we're teaching English, sometimes we teach an activity just to get through the activity. Sometimes I ask students to work on activity in pairs or in groups, and I don't give them any direction. And of course, they're going to raise their hand and say, what are we supposed to do? And I say, figure it out. What do you think you need to do? My dear friends, sometimes our students are getting too used to be taken by the hand through life. And a movie that oh, wait, who wrote that? Love and Support. So, a movie that I mention to teachers and students to see is the movie Wonder. And the main actor is Jacob Tremblay. Now, this adorable, cute, young kid that you see here with his tuxedo is actually the same kid that you see next to him. He was made to look this way for the role he played. And he was homeschooled for many years. At one point, he had to go to school. And he was a very smart young boy. And the reason why I ask, what do they need, your students? And all of you are writing this in the chat box, and I'm very happy to see this. Love, caring, support, understanding, empathy. There are many little snippets from this movie that you could find on YouTube, and they're great discussion videos for your students. As you can see here with the cartoon, all of the characters have a heart. The reason why the reason why Sorry, a little technical difficulty. And so what they need, and it's kind of cliche, but you're writing it, and I'm happy that you are, and that is love and support and caring and just being nice. You see, this has nothing to do with living in Ukraine or the United States or in Greece or in the Middle East or in Latin America or in Asia. This is something that in education needs to be done regardless of where you live. And it's a responsibility that we have. And let me tell you something. When you do this, it is something that will help with your students. Seriously. Now, I really want you to think about this. Okay? Because sometimes teachers look at me like this. And they go, I'm here just to teach English. What are you talking about? And I go, well, wait a minute. I go, yes, you're an English teacher. But have you ever, if you really know your students, what's going on in their homes? What's going on with their family life? If you show them parts of wonder, it will open up their eyes to a lot of things that are happening regarding relationships in school. Okay. I know it's kind of cliche. I mean, yes, support. You know what? Okay, let's think about these things that I'm going to show you now, okay, with what they need. So we have emotions, we have mindsets, so how they're feeling, how they're thinking, and now their needs, okay? There's a quote, a slogan that's called "Impossible is nothing." And I love this slogan. Is it grammatically correct? Impossible is nothing? Who said this? This slogan is from who? From what company? From what company is this slogan? Can anyone help me out? Adidas, thank you. Excellent. Yes. So impossible is nothing. And I say this to students. Because students say it's impossible. It's impossible, I can't do it. No. That mindset is not in my vocabulary. I don't understand what that means. I take the im and I take it out and I say, it's possible. And then I ask students to change this. And I go, possible is everything. Everything is possible. Now, this might be incorrect, but that's not the point. The point is, how are we thinking? What are we showing with our students? Maybe she's born with it. Who said this? Maybe she's born with it. Why am I giving you these examples? I'm giving you these examples because these are things that students can talk about. Okay. What do they need? Maybe she's born with it. Come on, guys. Ladies. Come on, ladies. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe.
Είναι πολύ special η μέρα αύριο, διότι είναι το Μιχαήλ Αγγέλου γιορτή.
Α, ναι, μπράβο, είναι Γαβρίλη και Μιχαήλ.
Ξέρεις, το δεύτερο μου όνομα είναι Μιχαήλοβιτς.
Όχι μόνο, κοίτα πόσο γιορτάζουν αύριο.
Κοίτα πόσο... Who's speaking right now? Somebody put their mic on. Interesting conversation you're having. So maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. Maybelline? Come on, guys. Am I dating myself right now? But then I ask myself and I say, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Photoshop. And then this is a conversation that I have with students because everything is about the image. How are we looking? What hacks can we have? What beautification can we do? And so what do students need? Students need to be listened to, understood, supported, loved, cared for who they are, who they really are, not who they're trying to be, someone else. Why am I saying this to you guys? Because when you're teaching students, sometimes we teach and come as you are. Very good as a slogan. When students come into class, the purpose of them coming into class is for what? To do what? Because in your school system, when we talk about the needs of our students, right? How important is English? In the curriculum, in the budget, the class sizes, who speaks first? Standardized tests. Are you teaching for a test? Are they learning for a grade? This all comes together and affects the classroom environment. The class time. Do you need more hours? So this is why when it comes to speaking, who speaks first? They work in pairs, they work in groups, they're constantly practicing the language. Will it get loud? Yes. Will your fellow teachers hate you sometimes? Maybe, because the classes are going to be a little bit loud. The buzzing of little bees, constructive chaos. If they're learning for a grade, then what's happening here is students are not, their focus, their objective isn't necessarily to learn for enjoyment, but it's learning for a result. Okay. And just to do a sound check. Can everyone hear me? Sound check. Yes. Oh, that's an interesting comment. The bravest speak first. If I may comment on that, I'll give you a little suggestion for that. The bravest speak first. Do you guys have monkeys in the classroom? Do you guys have some gorillas in the classroom? You know who I'm talking about. That when you ask a question and their hands go up and you don't call on them right away, they go and they make that sound. Come on. So I say to them, guys, when I ask a question or for kids to participate, I give the 10-second silent rule. And that means the whole class has 10 seconds to reflect on what's being asked so they can think of an answer. And as they're using those 10 seconds, you are scanning the room and you're not looking for the gorillas in the classroom who always answer, the bravest students who raise their hands, but rather you're looking at those students who are given the opportunity to think. You see it in their eyes that they have something to say. And you move closer to them. This is called the power of proximity, distance. You move closer to them and you say to them, I see that you have something stirring in your brain. Would you like to share it with me? This way they don't have to yell in front of the whole class. They say it to you in a short distance. And then what do you say? I love it. I love it. That's a great answer. Now, they made a mistake, though, when they were speaking to you. You repeat what they said correctly. They understand the mistake they made. They say, wow, my teacher respects me so much. They didn't tell me that I made a mistake. And then you say, can you repeat it again? And they repeat it again correctly. Now, some students may laugh at the mistake that that student made. We have respect in the classroom, boys and girls, respect. This is a guideline in our classroom. Respect. It's a skill. Respect. We don't laugh at each other making a mistake. We can laugh with one another because we've all made that same mistake once in our life. Ha 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 ha. But we don't do it to belittle our friends. You follow me? Okay. So, why are we not communicating? This is an interesting question that I ask students. And I ask you, my dear friends. Why are we not communicating? And some of you are actually doing it too. Why are we not communicating? Look at this. A picture tells 1,000 words. A wonderful couple sitting on the bench in the park. As the girl observes the little bird. And her boyfriend, what is he doing? Twittering. Twitter, 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 twittering. Why are we not communicating? This picture, when I share this with students, resonates with a lot of students. Back in the day, the parks used to be filled with kids playing. And now, heads are down, stuck in technology. It's a dopamine fix, believe it or not. You see, to me, dopamine is talking to a room filled with teachers. I love what I'm doing now online. I love watching your words on the chat box. But it's so different than me looking at 241 teachers who are with us right now and listening to you call these answers out and hearing your emotion and your expression and having that interaction and that relationship. Very different. Okay. I'm reading all of your comments in the chat box. You are all spot on. And so, as my dear Maya once said, and I leave you with this, people will forget what you said. Students will forget what happens in class. People will forget what you did. People will forget, students will forget what they did in class when they go home at night. But if you're able to communicate and connect with your students and have them connect with each other in class, building that relationship, believe me, they will never forget how they felt in class if they had a good day. And that's what it's all about. Having the experience in your classroom and have them feel good about that experience with you in class. So, my dear friends, I am open to questions, comments, concerns in the chat box. By all means, ask away. I'll give you a few minutes if you wish to ask questions. You're welcome.